Be me, 25-year-old woman, proud feminist and activist. Always been the kind of woman who rolls her eyes whenever a guy starts whining about how unfair the system is to men. To me, that's just male fragility trying to rebrand itself as victimhood. I grew up surrounded by conversations about women having to fight harder, carry more, and be taken less seriously in almost every aspect of life. So when I hear about a woman winning in court, especially in divorce court, I can't help but cheer a little inside. It feels like balance, like karma finally remembering which side of the scale has been heavier all along. That's why, when my coworker burst into the office one Tuesday morning practically glowing, I knew something big had happened. She stood there at her desk, grinning like she just won the lottery. "It's finalized," she said, voice trembling with excitement. "The divorce, it's done." Everyone in the office froze for a second, and then the celebration erupted. It wasn't just congratulations, it was cheering. A few of the women even clapped. Someone ran to the break room to grab muffins from the leftover catering tray. My coworker started listing the details with the kind of relish that made it sound less like legal paperwork and more like scoring a championship win. She was keeping the house. She got full custody of the kids. And the kicker, her ex would be paying her a generous settlement every single month, on top of child support. The numbers made my eyebrows lift. I won't repeat them here, but let's just say it was more than some people's salaries. "That's justice," one of the women said, raising her coffee like a toast. "Finally, a man paying for his mistakes," another chimed in. I laughed, nodding along, and felt a genuine rush of solidarity. Because in that moment, it didn't matter what the specifics were. To me, it was symbolic. This wasn't just her win. It was a win for all of us. Another example that women don't always walk away empty-handed after years of doing the invisible labor of holding a household together. I found myself echoing the mood, telling her how proud I was, how strong she was, how she deserved every bit of what she got. And I meant it. I even pulled out my phone later that day and typed a vague status on social media. Nothing too specific, just something like, "Another win for women everywhere. Keep fighting, ladies." A couple of my friends liked it. One left a fist pump emoji in the comments, and I went home that evening feeling almost buoyant. I thought about her victory as I made dinner that night, and the word that kept circling in my head was finally. Finally, someone I knew personally had gotten the better end of the deal. Finally, a woman wasn't left holding the short straw. Finally, one of us had won. And at that time, I had no reason to question it. In the days that followed, the office buzzed with a strange sort of energy, like we were all still high off my coworker's divorce news. People brought it up in casual conversations, checked in with her about how she was doing, even asked for details about what life was like now that she was finally free. I'll admit, I was one of the most curious. Maybe it's because I'd always been the loudest voice in my friend groups about how women shouldn't settle, how they deserved better, how marriage often just ends up being unpaid emotional labor for women. So I wanted to know what was it about her marriage that had pushed her over the edge. She was more than willing to talk. Over lunch breaks in the cafeteria, she'd lean in with her salad container and vent in a way that seemed rehearsed, but also deeply cathartic. She didn't describe abuse. There were no affairs, no gambling habits, no secret double life waiting to be uncovered. Instead, she sighed dramatically and said things like, "The spark was gone. He just didn't make me feel like a queen anymore." I tilted my head, waiting for more. She went on. "He chews too loudly. It drove me insane. Every meal felt like a test of patience. He leaves his socks on the floor, always. It's like he can't even see them. And don't even get me started on the dishwasher. He loads it wrong every single time, like he's doing it just to mess with me." I remember nodding, maybe a little too enthusiastically, because to me, these weren't small annoyances, they were symptoms. Symptoms of a man who didn't value his wife enough to try. She kept building her case, layering the little grievances like bricks until they formed a wall I couldn't argue against. I told him I needed more romance. I wanted effort. I wanted to feel special again. And all I got was excuses. "I'm tired, I worked late, you're overthinking." Always dismissing me, always acting like my needs were optional. That part resonated with me. How many times had I heard women complain about being invisible in their own relationships? It didn't matter if the husband was a good provider or not abusive. Why should that be the bar? Shouldn't women be allowed to want more? So, I found myself reinforcing her decision. "You did the right thing," I said between bites of my sandwich. "Life's too short to stay in something that doesn't make you happy. You don't have to settle." She nodded, eyes shining, as though she needed that validation. Exactly. I mean, if he can't do the bare minimum, load a dishwasher correctly, show me he cares, why should I waste my best years on him? The more she spoke, the more I saw her choice as a kind of bravery. Walking away from good enough takes guts. Women have been told for centuries to endure, to put up with things, to be grateful for scraps. And here she was, drawing a line. I admired it. In fact, I caught myself thinking that maybe her story was a warning for me too. That someday, if I found myself in a relationship where the man stopped making me feel special, I'd have the courage to leave too. But there was also this tiny nagging thought I pushed down. Were socks and dishwashers really worth blowing up a marriage over? It wasn't that I doubted her. I never wanted to come off like I was questioning a woman's reasons for leaving. But sometimes, late at night, I'd replay her words in my head and wonder if maybe it had been less about injustice and more about irritation. Still, I reminded myself, irritation can turn into resentment, and resentment can poison everything. And besides, the courts had sided with her. She was set up with the house, the kids, the financial support. If the law recognized her suffering, who was I to judge the scale of it? I stayed on her side. At the office, I clapped when she talked about her redecorating plans. I smiled when she pulled out paint swatches for the kids' rooms. I told her she deserved a fresh start, the freedom, the chance to reinvent herself without a man holding her back. In those weeks, the story I built in my head was simple. She had been undervalued. She had been ignored. And now she had won. I didn't realize then how fragile that story was, or how easily it would start to crack the moment I saw the other side. It was a Thursday evening when it happened. I had stayed late at the office, catching up on some project deadlines. By the time I finally shut down my computer and walked out, the parking lot was almost empty. The fluorescent streetlights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the asphalt. That's when I noticed him. At first, he was just a shape slouched against the side of an old sedan. His shoulders were hunched forward, his head bent low. I probably would have walked right past if the uniform hadn't caught my eye. A delivery jacket, the kind you see on guys hauling boxes into office buildings or dropping packages on porches. It took me a second to recognize him, but then my stomach dropped. It was him, my coworker's ex-husband. I froze mid-step, caught between pretending I hadn't seen him and the guilty curiosity that pinned me to the spot. I'd only seen his face a few times before, in old photos my coworker had shown us. Family vacations, birthday parties with the kids, that kind of thing. He looked different now. Worn down, thinner. His skin had that grayish tint you get when life is just grinding you day after day. He didn't notice me. He was too busy talking to another man leaning against the car beside him. His voice carried low, heavy with exhaustion, but the parking lot was quiet enough that I could hear every word. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he muttered. "2 jobs and it still feels like I'm drowning." His friend said something I couldn't catch, but he just laughed bitterly. "Rent's a joke. I'm paying for the house I don't live in, and I can barely afford this shoebox apartment near the highway. Half the time, I don't even buy real groceries. Instant noodles, dollar store cereal. That's my diet now." He rubbed his face with both hands, and for a moment I thought he might actually cry right there in the parking lot. But instead, he shook his head, forcing a hollow chuckle. "The kids ask when I can take them out. I don't have the heart to tell them I can't even afford the damn movie tickets. I don't want them to see me like this, like I'm disappearing." My chest tightened. He kept talking, each word piling heavier than the last. She gets the house, she gets the car, she gets vacations with them, and I get to drop off envelopes every month and pray I don't collapse from exhaustion before I hit 40. Some days I feel like I'm just a bank account with legs, a ghost funding someone else's life. His friend tried to console him, but the words barely landed. The ex-husband just leaned harder against his car, staring at the ground like it was the only thing keeping him upright. And me? I stood there frozen, my keys digging into my palm, my entire worldview starting to twist in on itself. Because up until that moment, I'd only ever seen divorce settlements as wins, as justice, as a way for women to finally get back what they were owed after years of invisible labor. That's how I had framed my coworker's victory, proof that the system could, once in a while, take a man down a peg. But here he was, And he didn't look like a man who had been taken down a peg. He looked broken, hollow, like the life was being siphoned out of him one paycheck at a time. And the reasons I had cheered for, the socks, the chewing, the dishwasher, suddenly seemed so small, so painfully trivial, compared to what I was seeing in front of me. I didn't say anything. I didn't step forward. I didn't even make eye contact. I just walked quietly to my car, trying not to let my heels click too loud against the pavement. My hands shook as I unlocked the door, slid inside, and shut it as softly as I could. But even with the windows up, I could still hear his voice echoing in my head. A ghost funding someone else's life. That line stayed with me the entire drive home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole scene in my head. The way his shoulders slumped, the way his voice cracked as he admitted to living off instant noodles, the bitter laugh when he called himself a ghost. I kept thinking about the details my coworker had shared with me. The socks on the floor, the chewing, the dishwasher. When she'd said those things, I had nodded along, because of course a woman deserves to feel valued. Of course she shouldn't stay in a marriage that feels lifeless. But lying there in the dark, the contrast between those complaints and the man I'd seen in the parking lot hit me like a punch in the chest. He wasn't some villain, some patriarch lording power over his wife. He wasn't an abuser or a cheat. He was just tired. And now he was being crushed under the weight of a settlement that turned everyday annoyances into a lifelong sentence. I hated myself for even thinking it, but the question gnawed at me. Was that really justice? The next morning at work, the celebrations continued like nothing had changed. My coworker floated through the office in high spirits, humming to herself as she scrolled through paint colors on her laptop. She talked about taking the kids on vacation, about redecorating the living room, about how free she felt now. Everyone clapped and cheered again, and I smiled along with them. On the surface, nothing about me had changed, but inside I felt like an imposter. When she held up her phone to show me the new furniture she was ordering, all I could see in my mind's eye was the ex-husband in his delivery uniform, wiping his face in a parking lot. When she joked about finally being able to breathe again, I heard his hollow laugh about being a bank account with legs. And suddenly, the victory I'd cheered for didn't feel like a win anymore. It felt like a trade. Her freedom, bought with his exhaustion. Her glow, fueled by his collapse. I didn't say anything, of course. How could I? I wasn't about to stand up in the middle of the office and announce that maybe we were celebrating too much, that maybe we should think about the man on the other side of this so-called justice. That would have made me sound like a traitor. So I stayed quiet. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh. I congratulated her when everyone else did. But the hollowness inside me only grew. It wasn't that I suddenly stopped believing in women's empowerment. I still knew how much harder life could be for women, how much we're asked to endure, how invisible our struggles often feel. But now, for the first time, I realized that pain doesn't cancel out someone else's. Her suffering didn't erase his. What I had witnessed wasn't some abstract debate about gender politics. It wasn't a meme about men are trash or women always get screwed. It was real. It was human. And it left me asking questions I'd never dared to ask before. Maybe not every win is worth cheering. Maybe not every loss is deserved. Maybe justice isn't as simple as picking a side. The following week, everything in the office was back to normal, at least on the surface. My coworker glowed with the kind of energy you only see on people who've survived a storm and come out feeling like they've won. She walked with a spring in her step, carried herself lighter, almost like she'd shed 10 pounds of invisible weight. She'd stop by my desk with swatches of paint colors, debating whether ocean mist or winter blue would look better in her daughter's bedroom. She laughed about how she was going to finally throw out that hideous couch she loved, and how she couldn't wait to replace it with something modern, something that felt like hers. Her joy was infectious. Everyone around her fed on it, echoing her excitement, validating her every choice. I nodded along too, smiled when I was supposed to, even tossed in the occasional, "You deserve it." But inside, I was haunted. Every detail of her plans, the new furniture, the vacation she wanted to book for spring break, the house she was redecorating, all of it had a shadow behind it. I couldn't stop seeing that man in the parking lot, bone-tired in his uniform, admitting to living on cheap food and scraping together rent for an apartment he didn't want. I couldn't stop hearing his words echo in my head. A ghost funding someone else's life. The contrast was unbearable. One person's freedom was being built on another person's collapse. One person's win was another's slow unraveling. And yet, I didn't say a word. How could I? If I spoke up, I'd sound like I was defending him, like I was undermining her victory. I'd be accused of missing the point, of siding with the man, of betraying everything I'd claimed to stand for. So instead, I played my role. I cheered with everyone else, even though my heart wasn't in it anymore. I still believed women deserved better. I still believed in empowerment, fairness, and refusing to settle for less. But for the first time, I couldn't ignore the other side of the scale. I couldn't deny that sometimes, in the name of victory, we overlook the cost. And this time, the cost wasn't abstract. It wasn't a statistic. It was a man's life being hollowed out by obligations he couldn't escape. A man I'd only known as the ex, but who now felt painfully human in my memory. I don't think my coworker lied when she said she was unhappy. I don't think she fabricated her reasons for leaving. Maybe to her, the socks and the chewing and the dishwasher were more than quirks. They were symbols of a bigger neglect. I'll never really know. But what I do know is this. The story wasn't as simple as I'd made it. There wasn't just one villain and one hero. There wasn't one winner without a loser. There was only imbalance, reshaped into something the court stamped as justice. So now when I think about that celebration, about the coffee toasts and the muffins and the high fives, I feel a little sick. Not because I don't want her to be happy, but because I can't unsee the price that happiness came with. I haven't told anyone this, not my friends, not my coworkers. On the outside, I'm still the same girl cheering for women's victories. But inside, I carry a quiet unease, a nagging voice that whispers, not every win is clean, not every loss is deserved. And sometimes in our rush to celebrate, we forget that behind every victory, there might be someone else quietly crumbling. That thought stays with me. It lingers in the back of my mind, a shadow I can't shake. My worldview used to feel solid, sharp, unshakable. Now it feels complicated. And honestly, I don't know what to do with that. Be you. Watch Green Tech Stories every night. Forget to subscribe. Missing out on tomorrow's story.